A perfectly ordinary day, 1997. The sun filtered through half-closed blinds, casting soft stripes across the bedroom wall. Dust motes drifted lazily in the golden beams, moving to a rhythm only they understood. Somewhere in the distance, a neighbor's sprinkler system clicked to life with a rhythmic pulse, the water making that familiar tapping sound against sidewalk concrete. Alex stirred under a comforter that had been kicked halfway down the bed during the night. The sheets were twisted, the pillow slightly too warm. That state between sleep and waking stretched out for a few precious moments, where the day ahead existed only as a hazy possibility rather than an obligation. The box fan in the corner hummed its steady white noise. It had been running all night, its plastic blades turning behind a metal grill that rattled slightly with each rotation. The sound was so constant, so familiar, that it barely registered anymore, just part of the room's natural ambiance, like the ticking of a clock or the distant murmur of a television downstairs. On the bedside table, an alarm clock displayed its oversized red numbers, 7:23. The colon between the hours and minutes blinked on and off, patient and mechanical. A few minutes yet before the alarm would sound, not enough time to fall back into real sleep, but enough to float in that comfortable, nowhere space. The walls were decorated with the accumulated artifacts of teenage life. A poster of a band, their faces frozen in black and white attitude. Another one showing a movie character mid-action, colors slightly faded from months of sunlight exposure. A calendar still showing last month, a bulletin board with ticket stubs, photographs, a fortune from a cookie that said something vaguely inspirational. On the floor, clothes formed small mountains, clean and dirty mixed together in ways that made sorting a perpetual mystery. A backpack leaned against the desk, covered in patches and pins and drawings done in permanent marker, band names, inside jokes, little bits of identity declared to the world. The CD player sat on a low shelf, surrounded by a semi-organized chaos of jewel cases. Some were stacked neatly. Others lay open with their booklets pulled out, abandoned mid-reading. A few discs themselves were scattered about, rainbow surfaces catching the morning light. 7:29. The alarm hadn't gone off yet, but Alex's eyes were fully open now, staring at the ceiling. The popcorn texture up there had patterns that emerged if you looked long enough. Faces, animals, abstract shapes that meant nothing but occupied the mind pleasantly. Time to begin the day. Time to move through all the familiar motions. But first, just a moment more of this stillness, this quiet, this space between sleep and waking where nothing was required yet. The house around the bedroom was starting to wake up too. Floorboards creaked somewhere as someone moved across them. Water ran through pipes in the walls. A door closed softly. The sounds of other people beginning their own mornings, their own routines, their own days. Outside, the neighborhood was fully awake. A car started. A dog barked. Someone was mowing their lawn early. The steady drone of the engine mixing with the occasional sputter when it hit a thick patch of grass. Life continuing in all its ordinary glory. Finally, movement. Alex pushed back the comforter and swung legs out of bed. Feet touched the carpet, slightly cool but not unpleasant. The transition from horizontal to vertical always took a moment, the body adjusting to gravity's renewed demands. The bathroom mirror was still slightly fogged from someone else's earlier shower. A hand swiped across it, revealing a face still creased with sleep, eyes not quite focused yet. The fluorescent light hummed and flickered for a moment before settling into its harsh brightness. Water from the faucet ran cold, then lukewarm, splashing against skin that gradually woke up under its touch. The ritual of washing away sleep, making the face presentable for the day ahead. The sounds of morning filtered in from other parts of the house. Someone walking across a floor upstairs, the distant drone of a news program, the coffee maker in the kitchen beginning its gurgling routine, a toothbrush, toothpaste with its minty sharpness, the mechanical up and down motion that required no thought after years of repetition. The mirror showed a reflection that was becoming more recognizable, more awake, more ready to face the world. Back in the bedroom, the daily question presented itself. What to wear? The closet door hung open, revealing options that ranged from comfortable to slightly less comfortable, from clean to probably clean enough. Alex pulled open a drawer, pushing aside various options. The flannel shirt, soft from too many washings, its colors faded to something more muted than they'd been when new. Perfect. A band t-shirt with a logo that meant something to some people and nothing to others. The cotton was thin and comfortable, worn in all the right ways. Wide-leg jeans came next, pulled from another drawer where they'd been folded in a configuration that made sense at the time but looked haphazard now. The denim was broken in, familiar. The kind of jeans that didn't require any thought or adjustment once they were on. The clothes went on in that half-awake state where muscle memory took over. Socks that didn't quite match but were close enough, both black, or at least dark enough that the difference wouldn't be noticed. Shoes that needed to be replaced soon, but not quite yet. The treads worn smooth, the laces fraying slightly at the ends. Everything familiar, everything comfortable. Everything exactly right for a perfectly ordinary Tuesday in October. Downstairs, the kitchen held the morning light differently than the bedroom. Brighter, more insistent. The windows faced east, catching the sun as it climbed higher. The refrigerator hummed its constant note. The clock on the microwave showed a slightly different time than the one upstairs, off by a couple of minutes, in that way kitchen clocks always seemed to be. Breakfast options lined up on the counter in their usual places. Pop-Tarts in their foil pouches, waiting to be toasted or eaten straight from the package. A box of cereal with a cartoon character on the front, the mascot's expression frozen in perpetual enthusiasm. Bread for toast. Juice in the refrigerator. Alex grabbed the cereal, poured it into a bowl with milk that was just on the edge of still being cold enough. The sound of cereal hitting ceramic, then the splash of milk, then the gentle crackling as the flakes began to absorb liquid. The spoon clinked against the bowl's sides in a rhythm that felt like percussion to the morning's quiet song. The television in the next room played to no one in particular, showing the tail end of morning cartoons transitioning into something more adult-oriented. News, weather, traffic. Things that existed in some other dimension of responsibility that didn't quite apply yet, but would, eventually, in the mysterious future of adulthood. Time passed in the way it does when you're eating cereal and letting your mind wander. Thinking about nothing in particular. Watching dust drift through sunbeams, listening to the house settle and creak around you. Each spoonful mechanical, automatic, requiring no conscious attention. The cereal got soggy toward the end, the way it always did. The milk in the bottom of the bowl turned slightly sweet and grain-flavored. Alex tipped the bowl up, drinking the last of it, an action that would have been uncouth at a formal breakfast, but felt perfectly natural here in the kitchen's casual morning atmosphere. Then up again, bowl in the sink with a ceramic clink. A quick rinse under running water. Not a real wash, that would come later when someone did the dishes properly, but enough to keep things from getting crusted and difficult. Backpack shouldered with its comforting weight. The straps settled into their familiar positions on shoulders that knew exactly where they belonged. The pack carried everything necessary for the day. Textbooks with their worn covers and dog-eared pages, notebooks with doodles in the margins, and notes that ranged from meticulous to barely legible, pens that worked and pens that didn't. A collection of absolutely essential items and things that hadn't been cleaned out in weeks. At the door, one last check. Keys, yes. Wallet, yes. Thin and containing not much, but enough for the day's needs. The portable CD player with its foam-covered headphones, essential, clipped to the backpack strap where it rode at the perfect height. A small collection of CDs in a zippered case, each one carefully selected for potential listening throughout the day. Everything in its place, everything ready. The door opened onto a morning that was cool but not cold. The kind of temperature that made you glad for long sleeves but didn't require a heavy jacket. The sky was that particular shade of blue that October mornings sometimes managed, clear and crisp, and promising nothing in particular except more of itself. The air smelled different than summer air, drier, tinged with the scent of fallen leaves and cut grass. Somewhere, someone was burning something, maybe leaves, maybe just trash in a barrel, the smoke adding a pleasant sharpness to the morning. The sidewalk stretched out in the familiar path it always took. Cracks and patches told their silent stories of seasons past. Winters that had frozen and thawed and frozen again. Summers that had baked the concrete until it expanded and contracted. Tree roots pushed up through the surface in places, creating little obstacles that feet knew to navigate without looking. Headphones settled over ears, the foam padding worn thin and comfortable, molded to the shape of Alex's head through countless hours of use. A finger pressed play on the CD player clipped to the backpack strap. There was a moment of silence, that brief pause while the disc spun up, and then sound filled the private universe that headphones created. Music that felt perfect for this moment, for this morning, for this walk. A song that had been played dozens of times already, but hadn't gotten old yet. The kind of track that captured something essential about being this age, in this time, in this place. The world continued around this bubble of sound. Cars passed on the street, their engines and tires creating a bass line beneath the music. A dog barked from someone's backyard, the sound muffled by fences and distance. Leaves skittered across the pavement, pushed by a breeze that couldn't be heard, but could be felt. The walk took about 20 minutes at a normal pace, but it wasn't really about getting from point A to point B. It was about the transition, the space between home and school, the time to be alone with thoughts and music, to wake up fully, to prepare mentally for the day ahead. Other students appeared on the path, converging from their various starting points toward the common destination. Some walked alone, like Alex, wrapped in their own musical worlds, their own internal monologues. Others moved in small groups, talking and laughing in animated conversations that looked like silent movies from inside the headphone bubble. A few people waved. Alex waved back, a small acknowledgement of shared experience and destination. No need to stop and talk. Not yet. The music was too good. The morning was too perfect in its ordinariness. There would be time for conversation later, in the hallways, at lockers, during lunch. The route passed by familiar landmarks, the house with the aggressive sprinkler that always seemed to be running, the corner store that would become important later in the day, the gas station where someone's older sibling worked sometimes, visible through the windows in their uniform shirt, looking both bored and responsible. The school building appeared gradually as the walk continued. First, just a shape in the distance, blocky and institutional. Then, more defined, the brick facade becoming visible, the windows reflecting morning sky and clouds. Then, close enough to see details. The flagpole with its metal clips tapping against the pole in the breeze. The parking lot filling with cars. The early arrival students sitting on the front steps or standing in clusters on the lawn. The flow of students increased as the building got closer. More backpacks, more voices, more movement. All of it heading toward the same set of doors, pulled by the same invisible schedule that governed these days. Alex turned down the volume on the CD player, then paused it completely. The bubble of music collapsed, letting in the full sound of the morning. Conversations, laughter, the scrape of shoes on pavement, car doors closing, the ordinary symphony of a school day beginning. Inside, the hallways smelled exactly like school hallways always smell. A mixture of floor cleaner and old books and teenage bodies, and something indefinable that was just the scent of the building itself. Industrial, institutional, but familiar in a way that made it almost comforting. Fluorescent lights flickered and buzzed overhead, casting their particular quality of illumination that never quite looked like natural light. Too bright in some places, creating shadows in others. The ceiling tiles above showed water stains in random patterns, abstract art created by leaks and repairs. Lockers lined the walls in long rows, metal doors painted in the school colors that had faded to something less vibrant over years of use. Some were decorated with magnets and photos and small mirrors. Others were plain, their surfaces marked only by the small ventilation slots and the combination lock hanging from the latch. Alex's locker was 3 down from the water fountain, right where it had been all semester. The spot had become territory, claimed through daily use and proximity to friends. The combination was muscle memory by now. Right to 15, left past 15 to 32, right again to 7. The satisfying of the mechanism releasing. The slight of hinges that needed oil but would never get it. Inside the locker was organized chaos. Textbooks stacked in a configuration that made sense to Alex and probably no one else. The heaviest ones on the bottom, the lighter ones on top, except where that order had been disrupted by hasty returns between classes. A jacket hung from a hook, ready for afternoon when the temperature would be different. Some papers that should probably be filed somewhere but weren't, accumulated in drifts at the bottom. A small mirror on the inside of the door, positioned at just the right angle for quick checks. Friends appeared, as they always did at this time. Jamie, leaning against the neighboring locker, already talking about something that happened yesterday, or something that might happen today, or something in between. The words came in a steady stream, requiring only occasional nods or brief responses. Sam approached from the other direction, moving through the crowd with practiced ease, navigating around clusters of people and open locker doors without breaking stride. A quick greeting, a question about homework that may or may not have been completed, plans forming for lunch. Conversations flowed in the particular rhythm of school morning talk. Not really about anything important, just noise to fill the space. Checking in, establishing that everyone was here, that the day was beginning as it should, that the social fabric of the group remained intact. The hallway around them was full of similar scenes: people at lockers, people moving between lockers, people standing in groups, people walking alone. All of it orchestrated by the same unspoken rules and social dynamics that governed high school life. The first bell rang, its sound cutting through the hallway din like a knife through butter. Not urgent yet, just a reminder. 5 minutes until the tardy bell. Enough time to grab books and close lockers and start moving toward first period. Books were selected from the locker's interior. English, history, math. Each one heavy with accumulated knowledge and homework assignments. The backpack accepted them, its capacity somehow always adequate despite seeming too small. The locker door closed with a metallic clang. The lock clicked shut. The hallway began to empty as students moved toward their various destinations. The sound changed, less chaotic, more purposeful. First period was English, in a room on the second floor where windows looked out over the parking lot. The climb up the stairs happened in a press of bodies, everyone moving in the same direction, feet on worn rubber treads, hands on metal railings polished smooth by countless previous hands. The classroom had that particular smell of books and old wood and dust that English classrooms somehow always had. Desks were arranged in rows, their surfaces carved with the graffiti of countless previous occupants. Initials, dates, small declarations and private jokes. Archaeological layers of teenage existence. The teacher stood at the front, writing something on the whiteboard with a marker that slightly with each stroke. The smell of the marker was sharp and chemical, mixing with the general classroom atmosphere. Black ink on white surface, words appearing in neat handwriting that would need to be copied into notebooks. Alex sat near the window, in the sweet spot that wasn't too close to the front and wasn't too far back. The perfect place for letting attention drift while still looking engaged. The chair was uncomfortable in the way all school chairs were uncomfortable, hard plastic seats and metal legs that when you shifted position. The teacher's voice rose and fell in patterns that were soothing in their predictability. Explanations of symbolism and theme, questions posed to the class that hung in the air until someone volunteered an answer. Discussion that moved slowly through the material like honey through a sieve. A notebook lay open on the desk, pen in hand. Notes were being taken, sort of. Some actual information from the lesson, bullet points about plot structure, quotes that might be important later, and some doodles in the margins, stars, abstract patterns, band logos practiced over and over until they looked right. Little drawings that helped the time pass. Outside the window, life continued independent of the classroom. Cars pulled in and out of the parking lot, someone late arriving, someone leaving early. Birds landed on the fence that separated school property from the street. Clouds moved slowly across the sky, their shadows passing over the building. A whole world carrying on, oblivious to discussions of literary devices and essay structure. Time moved in that particular way it moved during first period. Slow, heavy. Each minute stretching out to accommodate maximum boredom. The clock on the wall ticked audibly, its second hand moving in jerky increments around the face. But eventually, inevitably, the bell rang. The sound was harsh and electronic, cutting through whatever sentence the teacher was in the middle of. Everyone stood at once, the scraping of chairs creating a brief cacophony. Papers shuffled, books closed with soft thumps, bodies moved toward the door in a practiced flow. A river of students pouring out into the hallway. Second period. Math. A different room, a different teacher, but similar rhythms, similar patterns. Equations on the board, problems to solve. The scratch of pencils on paper, the occasional question, the slow crawl toward the bell. Third period. History. Maps on the walls, dates to memorize, events that happened long ago in places that seemed almost imaginary. The teacher's voice droning through the details of some war or treaty or revolution that shaped the world we lived in now, but felt impossibly distant. But there were moments of connection, too. A friend passing a note during third period, the paper folded into an elaborate origami creation, folded and refolded until it formed a small, thick square that could be passed discreetly from desk to desk. Alex unfolded it carefully, smoothing out the creases. Inside, the note contained nothing earth-shattering, just plans for after school, or a joke about something the teacher said, or a drawing. But the act of passing it, of creating this small, secret communication, made the moment special, made the boring class slightly less boring. Fourth period. Science. The smell of chemicals and old lab equipment. Bunsen burners sitting unused on lab tables. Posters showing the periodic table and the water cycle and cross-sections of various organisms. Knowledge presented in colorful diagrams that were supposed to make learning easier, but mostly just decorated the walls. And then, finally, lunch. The bell rang with its promise of freedom and the cafeteria. The hallways filled with a different kind of energy, more animated, more purposeful. Everyone heading toward food and conversation and the blessed break in the middle of the day. The cafeteria was its own universe of sound and smell and social dynamics. The lunch line snaked through the space, moving slowly toward the serving area, where workers in hairnets and aprons dispensed food that ranged from acceptable to mysterious. The smell was a complex mixture. Today's main course, whatever it was, mixing with yesterday's lingering aromas, and the week before's, and probably last month's too. The scent of institutional cooking. Not bad exactly, just distinct. Just unmistakably cafeteria. Alex moved through the line, tray sliding along metal rails. A plate appeared. Food was added to it. A milk carton, maybe a side of something green that was supposed to be vegetables. The lunch lady's face was pleasant but tired, smiling automatically as she served the same meal to student after student. Payment at the register. A card with a number punched into a machine. Or maybe cash. Exact change counted out slowly. Then out into the dining area proper, tray balanced carefully, navigating between tables and chairs and backpacks left in walkways. Alex and friends claimed a table in their usual spot. Not officially assigned, but understood through the unspoken rules of cafeteria society. This was their table. Had been for weeks now. Would be until someone graduated or moved, or the social dynamics shifted in some unpredictable way. The conversation flowed easily, jumping from topic to topic without any real direction. Someone mentioned the record store. Someone else talked about a show on TV last night, a plot twist that nobody saw coming. Speculation about what would happen next week. Plans began to form for after school, vague and loose, but taking shape. The food was eaten without much attention. It served its purpose. Fuel for the afternoon ahead. The taste was secondary to the social function of the meal. This was time to talk, to laugh, to exist in the company of friends. Around them, the cafeteria hummed with 100 similar conversations. 1,000 small dramas playing out simultaneously. Friendships and rivalries and romances all unfolding in the span of 45 minutes. The complex social ecosystem of high school in microcosm. Someone brought up the idea of going downtown after school, the record store specifically. There was a new album out, one that everyone had been waiting for. Or maybe not everyone, but enough people that it felt important, essential even. Alex had been saving for this album. Lawn mowing money accumulated over weekends, small allowances carefully hoarded. The price was steep by teenage standards, but worth it supposedly. Worth the sacrifice of other potential purchases. Worth the wait. Plans solidified over the remaining minutes of lunch. Who would go? What time they'd meet after school? Which route they'd take downtown? The record store as primary destination. Maybe the arcade. Maybe the comic shop if there was time. The bell rang, signaling the end of lunch period. Trays were gathered, trash collected, chairs pushed back with loud scrapes. The cafeteria began to empty, students flowing out toward afternoon classes with food-induced contentment or sluggishness, or both. The afternoon classes had a different quality than the morning ones. The light through the windows was different, more golden and horizontal, casting longer shadows across floors and desks. Energy levels had changed. The morning's freshness had given way to a kind of comfortable fatigue, a settling in. Fifth period, Spanish. Conjugations and vocabulary. The teacher speaking in practiced phrases, expecting responses that sometimes came easily and sometimes didn't. The language felt foreign in the mouth, syllables that didn't quite fit together the way English did. But the afternoon drowsiness made everything softer, less urgent. The mistakes didn't matter as much. The corrections came gently. Time moved in a pleasant blur of repetition and practice. Someone's pencil rolled off their desk and across the floor, making its way toward the front of the room with surprising determination. Everyone watched its progress with more attention than they'd given the lesson. It hit the teacher's desk with a soft tap, coming to rest against the leg. The teacher picked it up, held it up, asked who it belonged to in Spanish. A hand raised sheepishly. The pencil was returned. The lesson continued. Small moments of entertainment treasured in the long stretch of the school day. Sixth period was art class, which meant a different kind of space entirely. Tables instead of desks. More room to spread out. Windows that actually opened, letting in fresh air that carried the scent of cut grass and autumn leaves. The smell of paint and clay and fixative. Creative chaos contained within four walls. The art teacher was different from other teachers, more relaxed, more willing to let students work at their own pace. Background music played from a boombox in the corner, something alternative and indie that wouldn't have been allowed in other classrooms. Alex worked on a project that had been ongoing for a couple weeks, something abstract, or maybe representational, or maybe somewhere in between. The kind of thing that started with a vague idea and evolved through the act of making it. The kind of assignment that had been explained in terms of exploring concepts and expressing feelings, but really just meant, make something, and we'll talk about what it means later. Paintbrush in hand, colors mixing on a palette. The satisfying resistance of canvas or paper. The way paint went on, smooth or textured, depending on how much water was added, how much pressure applied. The process was meditative, calming, a welcome contrast to the morning's academic rigor. The teacher circulated through the room, stopping at each table or easel, offering suggestions and encouragement in equal measure, sometimes pointing out technical issues, sometimes just nodding approvingly, sometimes asking questions that made you think about what you were doing in ways you hadn't considered. Around the room, other students worked on their own projects. Some painted, some drew, some worked with clay at the pottery wheels in the corner, hands wet and earthy, shapes emerging from formless lumps. The sound of creativity. Brushes swishing, pencils scratching. Quiet conversations about technique and vision. And then, almost surprisingly, the final bell of the day rang. That one sounded different than all the others, or maybe the same tone but received differently, because this one meant release, freedom. The transition from the structured world of school to the open possibilities of afternoon. The exodus from school was immediate and enthusiastic. Students poured out of doors like water released from a dam. Some headed directly to waiting cars or buses, moving with the urgency of people who had somewhere to be. Others walked in the same general direction they'd come from that morning, heading home through familiar streets, ready to collapse into couches and forget about school for a few hours. But Alex and friends had different plans. There was time before dinner, time before homework had to be confronted, time to be somewhere else, doing something that mattered in the particular way that teenage activities matter, something that had nothing to do with school or parents or responsibility. They gathered at their usual meeting spot, a bench near the main entrance, and confirmed everyone was ready. Jamie was there, Sam, a couple others who had heard about the plan and wanted to join. The group was fluid, sometimes bigger, sometimes smaller, but always comfortable. They walked away from school, away from home, toward downtown. The route was familiar enough to walk without thinking. Past the elementary school with its shorter fences and brighter playground equipment, its yard already empty now that younger children had been collected by parents. Past the houses that lined residential streets, each one a small, contained universe of family life. Past the gas station where someone's older sibling worked sometimes, visible through the windows in their uniform shirt, looking both bored and responsible. The afternoon sun was warm on shoulders and faces. The temperature had climbed since morning, reaching that perfect point where it was comfortable to be outside, where you didn't need a jacket but didn't feel too hot either. October at its finest. The sky was still that brilliant blue, cloudless and infinite. The group walked and talked, conversation flowing easily without needing much direction. School gossip, plans for the weekend, debates about music and movies and television shows. The kind of talk that felt important in the moment but would be forgotten by tomorrow. But that didn't make it any less valuable now. Downtown wasn't much, really. A few blocks of storefronts, a main street that saw moderate traffic, small businesses that served the community, a hardware store, a pharmacy, a diner with a red and white striped awning. Nothing glamorous, nothing that would impress someone from a big city. But to teenagers with a couple hours to kill and a few dollars in their pockets, it represented possibility, adventure, independence. First stop was the corner store, a small place that sold a bit of everything. The bell above the door jingled as they entered, announcing their arrival to the clerk behind the counter, who glanced up briefly before returning attention to whatever magazine was spread out on the counter. Inside, the store was narrow and cramped, aisles packed with merchandise. Chips and candy lined the walls. A cooler hummed in the back, filled with sodas in glass bottles that still required an opener, the kind that left satisfying little circular dents in bottle caps, the kind that made a perfect crisp sound when opened. The clerk behind the counter nodded at them, recognizing regular customers. No need for words, no need for suspicion or hovering, just the universal transaction of teenagers buying snacks, money changing hands for chips and soda and candy bars. They stood outside the store afterward, eating and drinking in the afternoon sun. The warmth felt good after hours in air-conditioned classrooms. The snacks tasted better than they had any right to. Chips more satisfying, soda more refreshing. Everything enhanced by freedom and friendship and the simple pleasure of being young and outside on a Tuesday afternoon. Cars passed on the street. Other people moved along the sidewalk, wrapped in their own missions and purposes. Adults heading home from work, other students heading in various directions, the town continuing its daily rhythms around them. The arcade occupied a narrow storefront between a pizza place and a shop that sold skateboards and band t-shirts. From outside, you could hear it before you saw it properly. The electronic chirps and beeps and digital music, the mechanical sounds of buttons being pressed and joysticks being manipulated, the occasional exclamation from someone achieving or losing something important. The door opened with a jangle of bells that were immediately swallowed by the arcade's soundscape. Inside was darker than the street, lit primarily by the glow of screens and the occasional overhead light. It took a moment for eyes to adjust, for the space to resolve itself into individual machines and people. Machines lined the walls and formed islands in the center of the space, each one a small universe of pixels and challenge. Fighting games with their dramatic animations and impossible button combinations. Racing games with their steering wheels and pedals. Classic games that had been here since the arcade opened. Pac-Man and Galaga and Donkey Kong, their cabinets worn smooth by countless hands. The smell was distinct and immediately recognizable, a mixture of carpet that had absorbed years of spilled sodas, the ozone scent of electronics running hot, stale popcorn from a machine in the corner, and something else that was just the smell of the place itself. It hit you as soon as you walked in, familiar and somehow comforting, despite being objectively unpleasant. They didn't plan to stay long. The arcade was more of a waypoint than a destination today, a place to be on the path to somewhere else. but it was impossible to walk through without stopping to watch, to play, to feed just a couple quarters into a favorite machine. Someone was in the middle of an impressive run on one of the fighting games. A crowd had gathered behind them, watching the screen, reacting to each move. The player's hands moved with practiced precision, executing combos that looked impossible. The crowd murmured appreciation. Someone offered commentary. The game continued its digital violence in bright primary colors. Alex fed a couple quarters into a different machine, something less demanding, something that could be played casually. The controls were worn smooth, the buttons slightly sticky, but responsive, familiar. The game started with its attract screen fading to actual gameplay. Simple, addictive. The kind of thing that could eat hours if you let it. But just a quick game, one life, one attempt. The quarters disappeared into gameplay that was over almost as soon as it began. Game over. Continue? No, not today. The record store waited. The album waited. The record store was 3 blocks further down, in a building that looked like it had been other things before becoming this. Maybe a bank once, or a lawyer's office. The windows were covered with posters advertising upcoming album releases and local show dates, band names in bold fonts, release dates circled. A handwritten sign in the corner announced that they bought used CDs, cash, or store credit. A bell chimed when the door opened, more melodic than the arcade's harsh jangle. Pleasant, almost musical itself. The interior opened up into a space larger than it looked from outside. The building's previous life as something more formal evident in the high ceilings and ornate molding. Rows of CD racks stretched toward the back, organized by genre, then alphabetically by artist. Rock, alternative, hip-hop, electronic, jazz, classical, country. Each section marked with handwritten signs. Each rack full to capacity with plastic jewel cases standing shoulder to shoulder. Posters covered every available wall space. Some were official promotional materials. Others were handmade flyers for local shows. Others still were just cool images. Album covers blown up large. Photographs of musicians caught in perfect moments. The walls were a collage of musical history and current obsessions. A listening station occupied one corner, headphones hanging from hooks, ready for use. A stack of CDs sat beside it, recommendations from the staff, new releases they thought deserved attention. The setup invited exploration, discovery, the possibility of finding something unexpected. The clerk behind the counter looked up briefly as they entered, offered a small nod of acknowledgement, then returned to whatever magazine or catalog they'd been reading. The perfect balance of aware and unobtrusive. Present, but not hovering. Available if needed, but not intrusive. Alex moved toward the racks with purpose. There was an album that had been on the list for weeks now. Saved for. Thought about. Discussed with friends who had already heard it, and promised it was worth every dollar. An album that supposedly changed things. Redefined things. Mattered in ways that were hard to articulate, but deeply felt. The CDs were organized by genre first, then alphabetically by artist. Alex knew exactly where to look. The muscle memory of someone who spent too much time in record stores. Fingers walked through the plastic cases, flipping past familiar names and unknown bands. The rhythmic click, click, click of jewel cases shifting was its own kind of music. And there it was, the album, right where it should be, filed properly. Cover art exactly as imagined from seeing it in magazines and music videos. Alex pulled it from the rack, held it, felt the weight of it, examined every detail of the packaging. The cover art was striking, bold colors and interesting design that communicated something about the music inside without needing words. The kind of image that would look good displayed on a shelf, that would be instantly recognizable when you saw someone else carrying it. The back showed the track listing. 12 songs, each title examined, considered, imagined. Some had been released as singles and were already familiar. Others were completely unknown, full of potential and possibility. The total running time was printed at the bottom. 53 minutes. A good length, substantial without being excessive. This was what the last few weeks of lawn mowing money had been saved for, what weekends of work had accumulated toward. This small plastic case containing data that would be converted to sound that would somehow mean something, would soundtrack moments, would be played on repeat, would become part of identity in that way that music does when you're young and everything feels significant. Friends wandered the store, having their own browsing experiences. Jamie was over in the used section, flipping through bins of discounted CDs, looking for hidden gems. Sam stood at the listening station, headphones on, head nodding slowly to whatever they were sampling. Someone else called out about finding something unexpected, a band they'd forgotten about, an album they didn't know existed. Time moved differently in the record store. Minutes stretched out, accommodating the careful examination of liner notes, the reading of track listings, the consideration of purchases and near purchases. This wasn't a place to rush through. This was a place to linger, to browse, to discover. The atmosphere was comfortable in a way that encouraged exploration. The clerk didn't pressure. The other customers were absorbed in their own searches. Everyone united in the common purpose of finding music that mattered. Eventually, after sufficient browsing and consideration, the decision was made. The album was definitely coming home. Alex brought it to the counter, where the clerk rang it up with the practiced efficiency of someone who had done this thousands of times. The scanner beeped. The register displayed the price, exactly what it should be. No surprises. Money exchanged hands, bills and coins counted out, change returned. The CD was placed in a small plastic bag, white with the store's logo printed in black. The physical evidence of the transaction, proof of purchase, the beginning of ownership. Outside again, the late afternoon light had taken on an even more golden quality. The sun was lower in the sky now, casting longer shadows, painting everything in warm tones. The day was beginning its slow transition toward evening, that liminal time between afternoon and night when the world seems to glow. Time to think about heading home, about the reality of homework and dinner, and all the ordinary obligations that existed on the other side of this perfect afternoon. But the afternoon had been worth it. The album in the bag was worth it. Everything was exactly as it should be. The walk home followed familiar streets in reverse, past the same landmarks seen earlier, but different now in the changed light. The arcade with its glowing windows, the corner store, the gas station. All of it familiar, but transformed by the angle of the sun, the quality of the air. Shadows stretched longer now. Buildings cast their shapes across streets and sidewalks. Trees created patterns of light and dark. The air had cooled slightly, just enough to notice, that first hint of evening temperature arriving earlier each day as autumn progressed. Friends peeled off one by one, each heading toward their own house, their own evening routine. Jamie first, turning down a side street with a wave. Then Sam, heading in a different direction. Calls of, "See you tomorrow," that were guaranteed to be true but somehow still felt necessary to say. Little affirmations of ongoing friendship. Alex walked alone for the final blocks, the bag from the record store held carefully in one hand. The weight of it was pleasant, not heavy, but substantial enough to be aware of. Inside it, The album waited. Later tonight, after dinner, after the obligatory homework session, there would be time to really listen. Time to lie on the bedroom floor and open the jewel case with its satisfying click. To pull out the booklet and unfold it. To read every word of the liner notes while the music played for the first time. To discover whether the anticipation matched the reality. Whether the album lived up to its reputation. Whether it was worth the wait and the money and the build-up. But for now, just the walk. Just the quiet pleasure of movement and thought, and the ordinary beauty of a Tuesday afternoon in October. The sidewalk under feet, each crack and seam familiar. The sky overhead, that brilliant blue beginning to deepen at the edges. The comfortable weight of a backpack and the lighter, more precious weight of the plastic bag. The neighborhood was settling into early evening mode. Some people were arriving home from work, cars pulling into driveways. Others were out in their yards, taking advantage of the pleasant weather. Someone was grilling, the smell of charcoal and meat drifting on the air. Someone else was playing music, windows open, letting the sound spill out into the street. Home appeared around the final corner, looking exactly like it had that morning when Alex had left. Same house, same yard, same mailbox at the curb, same tree in the front lawn, same everything. But somehow it felt different when returned to. The place you left from and the place you came back to were never quite the same location, even when they occupied the same physical space. The house represented safety and routine and the known world, but also obligation, the homework that waited, the family interactions that were required, the normal domestic existence that was comfortable, but sometimes confining. A love-hate relationship that probably every teenager understood. Inside, the house had its evening atmosphere, different from morning, different from afternoon. A particular quality of light and sound and smell that marked this time of day. The smell of cooking drifted from the kitchen, something involving onions and garlic, the scent both appetizing and domestic. The sound of television came from the living room. Evening news, probably, or maybe some game show. The kind of programming that filled the hours before prime time. Background noise as much as entertainment. The voices of announcers and contestants creating a familiar soundtrack to the evening routine. The particular quality of light that came through windows at this hour was warm and domestic, more yellow than the harsh brightness of afternoon, softer around the edges, creating a cozy atmosphere that made everything feel settled and secure. Alex set the record store bag carefully on the desk in the bedroom, the album visible through the plastic. Waiting. Patient. It could wait a little longer. There were other things that needed to happen first. Family obligations, homework, dinner. Dinner happened in its usual time and place. The dining table. Plates and silverware laid out. Food served from pots and pans brought from the kitchen. The meal was ordinary, nothing special. The kind of weeknight dinner that happened hundreds of times a year. But that ordinariness was its own kind of comfort. Conversation flowed around the table. How was school? What happened today? Any tests coming up? Did you hear about so-and-so? The usual checking in that families did. The acknowledgement that everyone had moved through their separate days and come back together for this moment. Nothing particularly memorable was said, but the act of sitting together, of sharing food and space and time, that was what mattered. The food was eaten with minimal attention. It tasted fine. It served its purpose. But the mind was already moving ahead, thinking about homework that needed to be finished, and, more importantly, thinking about the album waiting upstairs. The promise of new music. The anticipation of that first listen. After dinner came the clearing of plates, the loading of the dishwasher or the washing of dishes by hand. everyone pitching in with their assigned tasks. The kitchen restored to order, the evening moving forward toward its next phase. Homework came next, spreading across the desk in Alex's room. Textbooks open to assigned pages, variables with their rows of problems, a notebook with essay questions that needed answering. The work that never ended. The academic treadmill that kept moving regardless of whether you wanted it to or not. But it was boring rather than impossible, tedious rather than difficult. The kind of work that could be done while the mind wandered to more interesting places. Math problems solved through muscle memory. Reading comprehension questions answered with minimal thought. An essay outline sketched out in bullet points that would be expanded later. The new CD sat on the desk throughout, still in its bag, waiting. Its presence made the homework go faster, providing motivation to get through the tasks and reach the reward that waited on the other side. Just get through this. Just finish enough to be able to claim it was done. Then the music. Then the real evening could begin. Finally, homework complete, or at least complete enough. The pages turned in notebooks, the problems solved or attempted, the threshold met or approached. Good enough for a Tuesday night. Good enough to move on to better things. The evening stretched out with possibility. No more obligations, no more requirements. Time now that belonged to Alex and nobody else. Time for the album. Time for the reward that had been anticipated all day. Alex sat on the floor, back against the bed, and carefully removed the CD from its packaging. First, the plastic wrap, pulling the little strip that made it come apart, that satisfying peel. Then the security sticker, removed with fingernails, leaving a slight residue that would mark the case forever. Then opening the jewel case itself, that satisfying click as the plastic clasp released. The disc caught the light from the desk lamp, its surface a rainbow of reflected color, purple and green and blue and gold, all shifting as the angle changed. The label in the center listed track names in small print, the manufacturing details in even smaller text, the legal warnings about unauthorized copying. The booklet pulled out easily, unfolding to reveal liner notes and lyrics and credits and photographs. So much information packed into such a small space, names of every person who contributed, thank yous to friends and family, lyrics printed in small fonts, photographs of the band or abstract images that connected to the music somehow. But first, before reading, the music. That was the priority. The booklet could be examined during the listening, or between tracks, or during repeated listens. But first, hear it, experience it. Let it wash over without preconceptions or information. The disc went into the CD player. Fingers pressed the button. The tray slid out with a smooth mechanical motion. The disc placed carefully on the center spindle, making sure it was seated properly. The tray sliding back in with that satisfying technological sound. A moment of silence while the player read the disc, recognizing what it held, preparing to translate the pits and lands on the aluminum layer into sound. The display showed track numbers, running time, all the technical information that made the magic happen. Then, the decision to press play. The commitment. The moment of truth. Would it be good? Would it be everything promised? Would it live up to the hype and the anticipation and the weeks of waiting? The first notes came through the small speakers, not loud. Alex hadn't turned up the volume yet, but clear. Intimate, actually. The room's acoustics made the music feel close, like it was being performed right there in the bedroom, rather than reproduced from a recording made months or years ago in some studio somewhere. Alex lay back on the carpet, staring at the ceiling, letting the music fill the space. Eyes traced the familiar patterns in the popcorn texture. Ears absorbed the unfamiliar sounds. The first track building through its introduction, establishing mood and tone, setting expectations for what would follow. The booklet lay open on the floor nearby, ready to be examined during the quiet parts or between tracks. Every word would be read eventually, every credit noted, every photograph studied. But for now, just listen, just experience, just be present with the music. Outside the window, darkness had completed its arrival. The street lights cast their orange glow across lawns and sidewalks. Occasional cars passed, their headlights sweeping across the ceiling, creating temporary patterns of light and shadow. The world continued its evening routine while inside this room, time seemed to slow down and expand. The album progressed through its tracks. Some were immediate, grabbing attention right away with hooks and energy. Others were more subtle, revealing themselves slowly, requiring patience and attention. The sequence felt intentional, carefully constructed, a journey from beginning to end rather than just a collection of songs. Between tracks, in those brief moments of silence, Alex reached for the booklet, reading lyrics to the song just heard, looking at the photographs, studying the credits, who played what instrument, who produced, who engineered, where it was recorded, all the details that gave context to the music. The album was good, maybe even better than expected, though it was hard to tell on first listen. Music like this needed to be heard multiple times, needed to settle in and reveal itself slowly. First impressions were just that. First. The real appreciation would come with repeated listening, with learning the songs, with discovering layers and nuances that weren't obvious immediately. But the initial impression was strong. This was going to be one of those albums, the ones that became soundtracks to this period of life, that got played on repeat for weeks or months, that became associated with memories and feelings and moments, that mattered in ways that were hard to articulate but deeply felt. Eventually, after the final track faded out, the album ended. The CD player clicked and whirred, returning the disc to its starting position, ready to play again if requested. The display showed the total time, 53 minutes. An entire journey completed, an experience had. Alex debated starting it again from the beginning, listening through a second time with the knowledge gained from the first, but decided against it. Better to let it sit, to think about it, to anticipate the next listening. Sometimes the space between listens was as important as the listening itself. The transition to sleep mode began, the gradual winding down, changing into comfortable clothes, pajama pants that were worn soft, a t-shirt too old to wear outside but perfect for sleeping. The transformation from day clothes to night clothes, marking the boundary between active and rest. Brushing teeth in the bathroom where the light seemed too bright after the dimness of the bedroom, the harsh fluorescent glare, the white tile reflecting it back, eyes squinting slightly, but the ritual necessary. The minty taste, the clean feeling, the preparation for sleep. Going through all the small rituals that marked the end of the day. Washing face, setting the alarm clock for tomorrow morning, pulling back the comforter, fluffing the pillow. All the tiny acts that created the conditions for sleep. Back in the room, the fan still hummed its white noise. It had been running all day, all night yesterday, probably all week. Just constant, just there. The background sound that made sleep possible. The alarm clock still blinked its colon, now showing a time that meant tomorrow would come soon enough. The posters on the walls were barely visible in the darkness, but their presence was felt, known, familiar. Alex climbed into bed, pulling the comforter up to a comfortable position. Not too high, not too low. The sheets were cool against skin. The pillow was exactly right. Not too firm, not too soft. The perfect combination that came from having slept in the same bed for years. The mattress familiar and welcoming. Every pressure point known. Every comfortable position memorized. Thoughts drifted in that way they do when sleep is approaching. Not focused, not urgent, just floating. Memories of the day just passed, the walk to school, classes, lunch with friends, the trip downtown, the record store, the album. All of it playing back in fragments and impressions rather than linear narrative. Anticipation of the day to come. Tomorrow would be Wednesday, halfway through the week. Classes again, homework again, but also more time with friends, more music, more ordinary moments that somehow added up to something significant, even if it was hard to say exactly what. The new album would be played again tomorrow, probably multiple times. In the morning while getting ready, on the walk to school, maybe, if the CD player's anti-skip buffer could handle the movement. Definitely at night again, getting to know the songs, learning the lyrics, discovering favorite tracks and moments. There would be more walking to school and sitting in classes and hanging out with friends. More ordinary moments that somehow felt special. More days like today, perfectly ordinary Tuesdays in October that added up to a life, to a youth, to this particular moment in time that couldn't last forever but felt like it might. Outside, the neighborhood was settling too. Fewer cars now, quieter voices, lights going off in windows one by one, everyone moving through their own evening rituals, their own transitions toward rest. The collective winding down of a community preparing for sleep. The fan continued its constant hum. White noise that filled the room, that blocked out other sounds, that created the conditions for sleep to arrive. The clock continued its digital persistence, the colon blinking on and off, the numbers changing minute by minute, time passing whether you paid attention to it or not. The room held its familiar darkness, punctuated only by the small red glow of the clock and the faint ambient light that seeped in from streetlights and moon. Enough to see shapes, not enough to see details. The perfect darkness for sleep. Neither too bright nor too black. Sleep came gradually, not all at once, but in stages. Consciousness fading like a radio station losing signal. The boundary between awake and asleep becoming less distinct, less defined, less important. Thoughts becoming less linear, more dreamlike. Reality shifting into something more fluid. And somewhere in that transition, that liminal space between waking and sleeping, the day released its hold. Tuesday in October, 1997. A perfectly ordinary day that had contained everything necessary. School and friends and music and walking and the simple pleasure of being young and alive and existing in this particular moment. Tomorrow would bring another day, equally ordinary and equally special in its own way. But for now, just this. The comfort of bed and darkness and the gentle approach of sleep. The fan humming, the clock blinking, the world continuing outside while inside this room, everything slowed and softened and stilled. The day complete, the night beginning. Everything exactly as it should be. Peaceful, comfortable, safe. The ordinary miracle of another day lived, another night arrived, another cycle of the sun and moon and earth continuing their ancient dance. And in the darkness, in the quiet, in the stillness, sleep finally came, deep and restful. Dreamless or filled with dreams, it didn't matter. What mattered was the rest, the renewal, the preparation for tomorrow, for another perfectly ordinary day, for another chance to be young and alive in 1997, when everything felt possible and nothing was certain, and life was just beginning. Everything exactly as it should be.